I never planned to fall for anyone that summer, especially not him. And definitely not while I was still trying to convince myself I wasn't broken. I had just come back to Westfall, the kind of American town you leave and swear never to return to. But failure has a strange way of pulling you back to the places you once escaped. New York had chewed me up. I returned home with no money, no clear future, and just enough pride to pretend I was fine. Daniel lived across the street. My best friend's dad, always polite, always reserved, the man you nod to from your porch, but never really know. I hadn't seen him in years, not since I was a teenager. But that first week back, I noticed him sitting outside every evening alone like clockwork. One night I was on the curb, trying to light a cigarette with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't even smoke before New York. That's when I heard his voice for the first time in years. You know those things will kill you, right? I looked up. He was leaning against his porch rail, watching me with a tired sort of amusement. I laughed, without humor. That's kind of the idea. He didn't smile, just raised his glass in my direction, whiskey maybe, and said, "Come sit. No use pretending to be okay alone." I don't know why I crossed the street. I hadn't even unpacked my suitcase, hadn't told half the town I was back. But something about the way he looked at me, not with pity but with understanding, pulled me in. "Rough night?" he asked, handing me a glass. "Rough couple of years." That was the beginning. We started talking most nights. Not always deep, not always personal. But there was something in the silence between us that made it feel like we didn't need to explain everything. Sometimes we sat without saying a word. Other times, he told me things I never expected. About his divorce, the tension with his son, the ache of waking up in a quiet house. He never said it outright, but I could tell he was unraveling in slow motion. The second week, he said something that stuck with me. You spend your whole life doing what you're supposed to. Then one day, you look around and wonder if any of it was for you. I stared at him, surprised by how much it echoed what I'd been feeling for years. And was it? He shrugged. Not enough. There was a pause. His gaze lingered just a second longer than it should have. Then he looked away. After that, the air between us changed. Not in a loud, obvious way. It was subtle. Lingering glances. A shift in the way he stood when I arrived. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting, that I was desperate for connection and reading too much into kindness. But I wasn't. Because one night, after a particularly quiet conversation, I stood to leave, and he reached out, barely touching my wrist, and said, "Stay a little longer." My heart stuttered. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. I sat back down, and we didn't talk for a long time. The next night, I waited on my porch. For the first time, he didn't come out. I stared at his house like a fool, thinking maybe I'd crossed a line that wasn't mine to cross. The silence felt louder than ever. Then my phone buzzed. One message. "You free?" It was from him. No name, no emoji, just 2 words that made my chest tighten. I didn't reply. I just walked across the street. He opened the door before I knocked. He must have been waiting. We didn't talk much that night. The TV was on, playing something neither of us paid attention to. I noticed his hand, resting near mine on the couch. Close enough to feel the heat, but not quite touching. And when I finally stood to leave, he didn't stop me. But his eyes followed me all the way to the door. I slept 2 hours that night, maybe 3. My mind was a hurricane of guilt, confusion, longing, all tangled in questions I didn't know how to answer. Was this real? Was I wrong? Was he? The next day, I told myself I wouldn't go back. But that night I saw him again, this time sitting on the steps, not the porch, as if he was waiting for something to start instead of end. He didn't speak when I approached, just looked up at me with those unreadable eyes and nodded once. I sat beside him. He passed me the glass. Whiskey, okay? Better than cigarettes. He laughed, that soft, guarded laugh that never quite reached his eyes. You still trying to outrun something? I looked at him. Aren't you? He didn't answer. But that night, when our hands finally brushed and neither of us pulled away, I knew. We were past pretending. We were crossing a line we couldn't uncross. And deep down, we both wanted to. The first time we kissed, it didn't feel like a choice. It was late, too late to be standing that close on his porch, too quiet not to hear how fast my heart was beating. Daniel had just finished telling me about the day his wife left for good. No drama, no yelling, just a quiet, final closing of the front door, and how the silence after that wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. He looked at me then, the porch light flickering above us. No words, no warning. He kissed me, soft, hesitant, and I kissed him back. It didn't last long, just a few seconds, but it changed everything. When I pulled away, neither of us said anything. There was no need. The line had been crossed. The unspoken became real, undeniable. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from guilt, from panic, because now I knew the truth, and I didn't know what to do with it. The next day, I avoided him. I walked different streets, ignored his texts, told myself I needed time. By the second day, he stopped trying, and I hated that it hurt. Not because I wanted some grand gesture. I just wanted to know it mattered to him the way it did to me. But maybe it didn't. Maybe I was just some temporary thrill, a slip in judgment. Maybe he regretted it already. I was still spiraling when the worst thing possible happened. Andy came back to town. His son. My best friend. We hadn't talked in months. Not since I ghosted him after moving to New York. But suddenly there he was, parking in front of his dad's house, smiling like nothing had changed. You still alive? He grinned, pulling me into a quick hug. Thought you dropped off the planet. I laughed, forced and shaky. Yeah, sorry. Life's been messy. He didn't push. He never did. The three of us ended up having dinner together that night. Andy's idea. I wanted to say no, to make up an excuse. But Daniel looked at me with that same unreadable expression, and I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. Sitting across from both of them, pretending nothing had happened, was torture. Daniel barely looked at me. When he did, it was brief, calculated. I couldn't tell if he was scared, ashamed, or both, and I hated that I cared. Later that evening, as Andy scrolled through photos on his phone and told stories about L.A., I slipped out to get air. I didn't expect Daniel to follow, but he did. You okay? He asked, keeping his distance. Are you? I shot back, more sharply than I meant to. He flinched. I didn't expect him back so soon. That makes two of us. We stood in silence, the air between us tense and brittle. I shouldn't have kissed you, he said finally, voice low. I laughed, bitter, cold. You think that's what I needed to hear? No, but it's the truth. No, Daniel, I snapped. The truth is, you wanted it, just like I did. But now that someone's watching, you can't handle it. That's not fair. Isn't it? He looked down. This isn't about shame. It's about consequences. I turned away. Same thing when you're a coward. I regretted the words the moment they left my mouth. But I didn't take them back, because part of me meant them. He didn't follow me when I walked off. The next week was hell. Rumors started spreading. Not about us. Not exactly. But people noticed things. The way Daniel had changed. The way I kept disappearing. Westfall was small, and small towns don't need evidence, just whispers. I overheard someone at the coffee shop say, "There's something off about him. The older one, the neighbor, doesn't talk much anymore. You think he's hiding something?" I left before they could say more. That night, Daniel sent a message. "We need to talk." I stared at it for 10 minutes, then deleted it. The day after, Andy asked me straight out, "Is something going on with my dad?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "You've both been weird." I forced a smile. "It's nothing. I think he's just lonely." Andy nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. That evening, I showed up at Daniel's door without knocking. He opened it like he'd been waiting. "I can't keep doing this," I said, stepping inside. He closed the door behind me. "I know." "Then tell me what this is, what it means to you, because I'm losing my mind trying to guess." He didn't answer right away, just stared at the floor. "You're the first person in a long time who's made me feel seen," he said finally. "But I'm terrified of losing my son, of being hated by everyone I've known for decades, of waking up one day and realizing I destroyed my life chasing something I wasn't even brave enough to name." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You didn't destroy anything. Not yet." He looked at me, eyes raw. "But I will, if this continues." I stepped closer. "So stop hiding." He shook his head. "It's not that easy." "It never is," I said. "But I won't be your secret, Daniel. I won't be the thing you regret in the morning." Silence again. He didn't move. I turned to leave. But before I could reach the door, he said, "Then what do I do?" I stopped. "Start by deciding what kind of man you want to be," I said, "because I already know who I am. And I'm done pretending it's not enough." And I walked out. After that night, Daniel didn't call. He didn't text. I wasn't surprised. But silence has a way of becoming unbearable when it used to be filled with something real. I tried to go back to normal, whatever that meant. But the town didn't let me. Not anymore. It started small. A woman I didn't know crossed the street when she saw me. A man at the gas station who used to nod now looked straight through me. The barista at the coffee shop forgot my order 3 times in a row. Westfall didn't need confirmation. It only needed suspicion. Andy stopped reaching out. I saw him once from across the street. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something, then turned away. That hurt more than anything. A week passed before I saw Daniel again. He was at the grocery store, walking quickly down the frozen food aisle, eyes fixed ahead. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and pretended not to. I let him walk, but it ate at me. That night, I wrote him a message. "I didn't come back here to ruin your life, but I won't apologize for caring about you." I didn't send it. 2 days later, it got worse. Someone, I never found out who, told Andy. Not all of it. Just enough. Enough for him to show up on my porch, fists clenched, voice shaking. "Did you sleep with my father?" I opened my mouth, closed it. There was no right answer. He didn't wait for one. "I trusted you. He trusted you." "I didn't use him," I said, barely above a whisper. "And it wasn't a game." "You're disgusting," he said. "You broke my family once. You just finished the job." Then he left. That night, I sat in my car for hours, parked by the lake just outside town. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb, letting the world shrink into silence. When I finally went home,
There was a note on my porch. No name, just a folded scrap of paper. I never meant to hurt you, but I'm not strong enough for this. It was his handwriting. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I did the only thing I knew how to do when I felt like I was drowning. I wrote 3 pages. Not about Daniel, not about me, about fear, about silence, about how pretending to be someone else for the sake of safety is just another kind of prison. I didn't sign it. I printed 10 copies and posted them around town.
Grocery store bulletin board, public library, laundromat, church entrance, no accusations, no names, just truth. The backlash came quickly. A woman confronted me outside the post office. Shoving your politics in people's faces now? Another said, you should be ashamed. But a boy, maybe 17, handed me a folded piece of paper 2 days later. One sentence. Thank you for saying what some of us can't. I kept that note in my wallet. 2 weeks passed. I hadn't seen Daniel. I thought maybe he'd left town. Maybe that was his solution, disappear before things got worse. Then I got the call. From his ex-wife. Daniel's in the hospital, she said. He collapsed at work. I was in my car before she finished the sentence. When I arrived, he was awake, hooked to machines, pale, silent. He didn't speak when I walked in, just looked at me, like he couldn't believe I came. I'm fine, he said, finally. You're not, I said, and you don't have to pretend. He closed his eyes. I ruined everything. No, I said. You just finally stopped lying. He laughed once. Dry, tired. That's the same thing in this town. I stepped closer. Then maybe it's time to stop caring what this town thinks. He looked at me. And care about what? About being honest. About being happy. He shook his head. It's too late. No, it's not, I said, firmer this time. You still have a choice. He didn't respond. But the next day, he did something I didn't expect. He showed up at the community center. There was a town meeting, something about school funding. He sat quietly in the back. When it ended, people started filing out. Then he stood up. I have something to say, he said, loud enough that everyone froze. My heart stopped. He looked right at me. For most of my life, he said, I did what was expected. I kept things inside. I convinced myself that silence was safer, that hiding made me stronger. People turned. Whispers rippled. But silence cost me everything, he continued. And I won't do it anymore. He didn't mention names.
He didn't need to. I'm not asking for applause, he said. Just for space, to live honestly, and maybe one day for forgiveness. Then he walked out. The room was dead silent. I didn't follow him, not right away, but I smiled for the first time in weeks, because he finally made a choice. The fallout from Daniel's speech hit faster than either of us expected. By the next morning, his job was under review. The church removed him from the volunteer board. Neighbors who once waved now closed their blinds. And Andy, he didn't say a word. Not to Daniel, not to me. Silence had become his answer. Daniel tried to act like it didn't bother him. Said he finally felt free. Said the worst was behind him. But I saw the way his hands shook when he checked his phone. How he deleted texts before reading them. How he hesitated before stepping outside. Freedom, it turned out, was a quieter kind of war. And some nights, it looked a lot like loneliness. I stayed close. I made excuses to drop by. Leftover food, a borrowed book, a walk to clear my head. He never said no, but he never asked me to stay either. It wasn't rejection. It was guilt. He blamed himself for the way things had unraveled. For Andy, the town, the life he couldn't piece back together. One night, I found him sitting on the back steps, staring at the sky. I keep thinking I'll wake up, and this will all go back to normal, he said. Then I remember, this is the new normal. Maybe that's not a bad thing, I said quietly. He looked at me. You lost everything too. I didn't have much to lose, I said. At least now I know who I am. He didn't answer, just nodded slowly, like he wished that certainty belonged to him too. A week later, I got an offer. A friend in Chicago, someone I'd interned with once, had a room open and a part-time writing gig available. Nothing big, nothing stable, but it was something. For the first time in months, I saw a way forward, a way out. I didn't tell Daniel right away. I told myself I needed time. But really, I didn't want to see the look on his face when I said the words. That same week, Andy showed up at my door. No warning, no text, just there, looking older than I remembered. I shouldn't have said what I said, he began. I was angry, hurt. I know. I'm still angry, he added, but not at you. I waited. At him, Andy said, for hiding, for dragging you into something he wasn't ready for. I exhaled slowly. I chose to be there. Still, he said, eyes distant, I hate how it ended. So do I. He looked up. Are you two together? I didn't know how to answer that. We care about each other, I said finally, but I don't know if that's enough. Andy nodded, like he understood more than he let on. Then he left. Later that night, I told Daniel about the job. His reaction was quiet, careful. When do you leave? He asked. Next week. Maybe sooner. He nodded, looked past me. I thought you'd be happy, I said. I am, he said. I just didn't think you'd leave first. His voice was steady, but there was something in it that landed hard. I'm not leaving you, I said. I'm choosing myself, and I think you'd want that for me. He didn't speak, just stared at his hands. On my last night in Westfall, we sat outside like we used to. No drinks, no small talk, just air and silence. I don't regret you, Daniel said suddenly. My throat tightened. I regret the time I wasted pretending I didn't want this, that I didn't want more. But not you. Never you. I looked at him, unsure what to say. You made me see myself, he said, even when I hated the reflection. I saw someone worth loving, I replied, even when you didn't. He nodded once. Then again. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. We just sat. Two people who'd weathered something irreversible, letting the night carry the weight of what we couldn't say. The next morning, I left before the sun rose. No goodbye at the door, no dramatic farewell, just a note left on his table. You helped me find the strength to leave. I hope one day you find the strength to stay.
Chicago was loud, fast, indifferent. The kind of place that didn't care who you loved or what you left behind. It didn't feel like home, but it felt like freedom. I took the job, wrote short stories nobody read, slept on a mattress on the floor, drank too much coffee, got lost in crowds that didn't know my name. I thought of Daniel every day. At first it hurt, then it became something quieter. Not regret, not longing, just a truth I carried. 1 month after I left, he sent a letter, handwritten, no return address. I started seeing a therapist. I told Andy everything. It didn't fix us, but it helped. I've been volunteering again, somewhere new. People still stare, but I don't look away anymore. Thank you for being the first person I didn't have to lie to. I hope you're well. I hope you stayed brave. I read it twice. Then I folded it, placed it in the same wallet where I kept that boy's thank you note. And I went on with my day, because I wasn't waiting anymore. 6 months passed. I stopped counting after the second. Chicago became livable. The job turned full-time. My name appeared in a few small magazines. I made friends who didn't ask about my past, and I let myself believe that healing could be quiet, slow, but real. Then I got the message. From Andy. Just 5 words. He's moving. You should know. No explanation, no details. I stared at it for an hour before replying. Why now? He answered almost immediately. He said he's finally ready. I didn't sleep that night. I kept going over the last conversation I had with Daniel. How careful we both were. Like saying too much might make it harder. And maybe it would have. Maybe we both needed time to figure out who we were without each other. But now, he was leaving Westfall. And something in me knew I couldn't ignore that. The next day, I boarded a bus. I told myself it was just for closure, just to say goodbye properly. But I already knew that was a lie. Westfall looked the same, like nothing had happened. But I had. Daniel wasn't at his house.
It was half-packed, boxes in the driveway, blinds drawn. I knocked anyway. No answer. I turned to leave when I heard my name. He was walking up the street, holding a coffee cup, looking unsure of what to say. We stood there, facing each other, letting the moment catch up to us. "You came," he said finally. "You left a door open," I replied. He nodded. "I didn't think you would. I didn't think I needed to." He didn't speak, just stepped aside to let me in. The house felt different, not physically, but emotionally. Lighter, like it had finally stopped trying to hide. "I'm moving to Asheville," he said. "Small place. Not too far, but far enough." "Starting over?" "Starting honest." I sat down. "And Andy? He's trying. We talk more now than we did in years. There's still tension, but he knows everything." And he didn't walk away. "I'm glad," I said. And I meant it. He looked at me for a long time. "I almost wrote you again." "You already said what mattered." "I didn't," he said. "Not all of it." I waited. "I loved you," he said. "Still do. I just couldn't carry it when I was still carrying shame." The words hit hard, not because I hadn't hoped to hear them, but because I didn't realize how much I needed to. "I don't know what you want from me," I said. He stepped closer. "Nothing. Not anymore. I just wanted to stop pretending I didn't mean it." A long silence followed. One of those moments where every possible future sits between two people, and one word can tip it. "I'm not asking you to come with me," he added. "I wouldn't do that to you again." "But if I did?" I asked. "What then?" He swallowed. "Then I'd build something with you, slowly, without hiding, without apologies." I nodded, took a breath. "I'm not the same person who left," I said. "I'm not the same person who made you," he replied. We smiled. It wasn't relief. It was recognition. That evening we walked to the lake. Same place I sat alone all those nights ago. He stood beside me now. "I've thought about this moment," he said. "What I'd say if you came back." "And?" "I always imagined something dramatic. Something that would fix everything." "But you know better now," I said. He nodded. "Yeah, it's not about fixing. It's about choosing." We stood in silence as the water caught the fading light. "You leaving tomorrow?" I asked. "Depends," he said. "On if I'm going alone." I looked at him. Steady. Open. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the answer. "I have a life in Chicago," I said. "A job. Friends. A place I built. I know. But I'm tired of building things alone." The next morning we left together. Not with promises. Not with guarantees. Just two people who had already lost too much by pretending they didn't want more. This time, we chose each other. and whatever waited on the other side, we would face it without hiding. Morale: the hardest truths are the ones we bury under fear. But truth doesn't destroy us. It frees us. And love, when chosen with clarity, doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. No more secrets, no more silence, just choice.